And welcome to Hitchhiker Stories from the Road, and welcome to this new episode where tonight we get to talk to a fan, learn why they love music, what makes them tick, what music do they love, and what makes them sick. I just Dr. Seuss that shit. But tonight, I get to introduce someone who welcomed me so generously not that long ago to his house and introduced me to the city I'll be moving to. And tonight, I get to talk to Ryan Blackwell. Now, first of all, you're probably saying, how do I know this guy and why does he look familiar? Well, real simple. During the pandemic, Ryan shared with his passion of music and his love for Pearl Jam covers across many of the platforms that we love on Facebook. His music and his inspirations behind Pearl Jam and his covers were so delightful. It kind of got us through that pandemic. It kind of, for a couple of minutes listening to him, it was kind of like, hey, everything's going to be cool. So tonight, Ryan's on the show. We're going to talk to him for a little bit, get to know him a little bit more, and then hopefully get a more of an appreciation of who Ryan is. So, before we dive into this, let's get into a simple question. Kill the music. Ryan, how's it going, brother?
Going good, man. How you doing, Anthony?
I am good. I'm glad October's over. Into November.
Right. Next month. Let's do this, right?
Ain't that the damn truth? And it is a special day. It's the 10th. Every month, the 10th comes out. We get some new Pearl Jam merch to purchase or some news to come through. So 10th is always a good day to kind of hang around the old email.
Right. So what did you end up getting? Anything new?
So I'm going to tell you this. My wife hopefully is not paying attention.
I'm sure she's not listening.
No, she isn't. She can give two shits about what I'm doing. So I just purchased the new GoPro 10 today with like a million accessories, and it cost me a lot of money. And I saw the hoodie, and I saw the sweatshirt, and I got the sweatshirt, but I almost got the hoodie. Then I found out it was a woman's hoodie, and I like the hoodie better than I like the sweatshirt. But I only buy it because I buy every like merchandise that Pearl Jam puts out because I'm just a sucker for merch. But I didn't get the Vault vinyl, which I'll post that. I'll post that up real quick. There's the Vault vinyl, got released today. Vault number 1 came out during Pearl Jam 20 on CD. So if you were lucky enough to get that back then, you got it. If you didn't, well, this was your opportunity to get it on vinyl. And then then of course they had the sweatshirt and hoodie, but and they're cool. I kind of dig the hoodie more than the sweatshirt, but I guess it's women only, so I got knocked out of that.
Well, what colors did it come in?
Well, the sweatshirt's black, and then the woman's is like that teal color, but it's women's sizes. My luck, I'll get it, and then it's just going to be, I'm losing weight, but I mean, I don't know if I'm going to fit into a woman's extra large.
Right. Well, I don't know, man. I'm not sure what to tell you on that one, but maybe that'll just give you some more inspiration to lose a couple more pounds.
That's right. I am digging hard for that woman's extra large. That's my goal.
If you can make it to a women's extra large, you've accomplished something. You've done. You can be done.
Well, it's interesting we're talking about sizes, not to totally get off topic, but so since I lost weight, I've been going into like my Pearl Jam closet because I have hundreds of Pearl Jam shirts. And there's one Pearl Jam shirt I've had, and I've never been able to wear. It's like this, it's the Pearl Jam Blue Avocado from the 2006 tour.
Yeah.
And it's a double XL, but damn, if that thing still doesn't fit me like a medium, like it is like, I don't know what they were thinking with t-shirt sizes back then. Everything was like totally off. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to fit in that shirt. I mean, it was like, it looked like I painted the damn shirt on me. It was terrible.
I think most of those concert shirts then were 300% cotton, and you washed them once, and you better stay thin, right?
Ain't that the damn truth? I mean, that avocado, it stretched so much it looked like scrambled eggs on my chest. It was not a good look for me. So I was like, I guess this one's never gonna happen. I might have to send it to Crash just to make me a hoodie. But
oh man,
but no, merchandise, Pearl Jam stuff. Yeah, that I'm a sucker for it, as you can tell by the Funko Pops or the Mike McCready bobblehead or even the Save the Wolves from the 2013 tour. I'm a sucker for it. Like they get me every time.
Well, you told me when we had a visit a few weeks ago that the first thing you do whenever you go to any show, as soon as they open up that merch table, walk right up, give me one of everything, slap the card down.
Oh, dude, I just go like this, and I said, I don't even want to know. One of everything. I'm a double XL. And they look at me like, what? It is. They're like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, listen, I will, if I don't buy one thing from here, if like I just skip out on one thing, I will regret it for the rest of my life. And I just
Yeah,
It's one of everything, please. Yeah, slap the card down. And then
that's
I
awesome.
deal with all the aftermath for my wife later on. And then I tell her, I'm like, listen, the first show is always the worst. After that, it's just a slow. I just get a poster a show. Everything else, we're good.
It's just a new poster every show, and that's all you have to do, right?
Unless it was 2013 where they made a T-shirt, a sticker, and a poster for every show, and that got expensive. That tour.
Yeah, that's kid might not go to college.
Why do you think we're
Right.
moving to Kansas City? I can't afford it. He's got to get He's got to get something.
You need to get to the Midwest. It's a little less expensive.
Oh gosh, yeah, ain't that the damn truth? So hey,
Oh
listen,
shoot.
let's get into this. So we got to know you during the pandemic because you started going live and covering some Pearl Jam songs. That's how I got to know you. That's how we got to get formulated through the channels of that. Before we get into why you love music and stuff, I want to know what made you decide during the pandemic to jump on and start covering Pearl Jam songs.
It's kind of funny. I had never done anything like that before, and to be honest with you, I as big of a Pearl Jam fan as I am, I never had been on even a Facebook Pearl Jam page, anything. I don't know. I probably just didn't want to be on Facebook that much. And as we got closer to, so they were supposed to play in Kansas City, or I'm sorry, in
St.
St.
Louis.
Louis, which we were going to, me and a good friend of mine were going, who I've seen a lot of shows with, we're going to drive to St. Louis, see the show. And I believe it was on April 4th last year. And as we got closer, into March, they started talking about canceling these tours and everything like that. And that's kind of why I got on Facebook, started looking at some different pages just so I kind of keep up with that stuff. And I also had tickets to Rage Against the Machine for May. So I was kind of keeping an eye on both of those things. And to be honest, I think the very first time I ever posted anything was, I believe it was on April 4th. I'd have to go back and look for sure, but it was right either that or right when I found out that they weren't going to be playing. And it was just sort of a whim deal. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to play a song, throw it out there. I didn't really even know why. Maybe I was just kind of bummed out and thought, whatever, and I did it. And I was shocked. People literally, Australia, Europe, everywhere around the world, all of a sudden I'm just like getting these personal messages for about a week. And I put up a few songs and people are like, hey, can you play this? Can you do that? And I kind of thought, I always sort of thought of it as kind of I don't want to say cocky thing, but like a thing where, if you're showing everybody you can play this song, it's sort of like, hey, look at me. And I'm not really like that. That's not my style, but I was totally shocked how many people were saying, wow, thanks for taking me out of the funk for 5 minutes and playing a song. And our friends that we used to hang out with 2 miles away, we can't hang out with them right now because we're on lockdown. And that's my buddy that plays guitar, and we usually sit around and we listen to exactly what you've been doing. And I it sort of hit me. I was like, wow, this is pretty neat. I didn't ever think of it like that, but if I can pull somebody else out of the same funk that I'm in for not getting to go see live music or go to see, my favorite bands, then I'll do that. So I did a bunch of songs and just sort of would get a message once in a while, hey, do you know this one? And I thought, well, whatever. It took me 4 minutes to play something, record it, and post it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And people just seemed like they really enjoyed that and appreciated it. It was really nice, some of the messages and compliments that I got for and thanking me for doing that. So that was kind of the idea. I thought, you know what, if it makes 50 or 100 or 5 people happy that weren't happy 10 minutes ago until they watch this for just a minute, then it's worth it. So, why
Well,
not?
it's crazy to think that during the pandemic, when everything was affecting our lives and everything was falling apart around us, it was pop culture and music and movies and things that kept us sane. Like
Right.
as individuals, we communicated through social media and our telephone. So the only way that we were able to function as people was through those devices, and to have the ability
Right.
to, meet people that we'd never met before through music and outlets like that. It was pretty impressive to show like the positive side of social media for once, right? Like the you know,
Yes.
because there's a lot of negativity that comes with social media, but for one time, for about a year, we had it where a lot of positive, and there were still negative things around it, but there was a lot of positive things where people were able to communicate, you know, in a different outlet to express themselves that also made people feel comfortable around it. And I think, you know, seeing all these people, you know, play live music and just come out of the woodwork, and, you know, that was special and inspiring in its own time to show like, hey, the arts are special. Like, you know, let's stop shitting on them a little bit. Like when it comes to schooling and stuff like that, like, you know, let's stop cutting that out, because that shows you how that can help a mental state in people.
Absolutely. And you know, I've been doing it for a minute, so you know, I you know, when people say, "Oh, you're really good," well, I kind of should be. I've been doing this for like, you know, 30 years, so I should be okay at playing, or maybe I find a different hobby or something. But um, what I really would impress me the most were the people that, I mean, I'll just say it, and it's not a big deal. People that weren't as good players, or couldn't sing real well, or couldn't even play real well, but they just were trying. You know, they just put it out there, and um, that was big. You know, I never really seen much of that before. So it was, yeah, it was a really positive thing, and I've met people. You know, I've never stretched out to any other musicians like in any other countries or anything like that, and I feel like, you know, I've got friends now. I'll call them friends, you know, Facebook, social media, music friends that are, you know, in the UK, Europe, and, you know, South America, you know, halfway, or even Australia. You know, one guy in New Zealand said, "Come to New Zealand. Well, you can stay here and we'll just play guitars for a week." And I'm thinking, right, that sounds pretty good. You know, it was just, it was a real positive thing, and I think for especially people that love music as much as like you and I do, it was a good outlet and a good way just to communicate when we couldn't go out and see live music, or sit with our friends and jam and, you know, play in our bands or go to a place and play music for people. It was just a good way for us to get that out a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting, you know, how even like, you know, even during the pandemic, how we could revisit music we hadn't heard in a long time. Like, you know, because in our lives, you know, you work a lot, I work a lot. We don't have the time to dig into albums and music as much as we'd like to, because our time is
Right.
limited. We both have kids, so we know what it's like, and our kids are of the same age. Our time is limited to what we can do, you know, in the car when
Right.
we're at home a little bit. So, you know, during the pandemic, you were able to dig into some stuff too, which was kind of neat, like going back and really diving into some music. So, no, that it is interesting, and I love the fact that, like, you know, I think like even the pandemic like brought you and me together in its own sense, where you messaged
Yeah.
me like, "Hey, you're coming to Kansas City. Hey, I'll cook you some food," you know, and you kept texting me, "What do you want to drink? What do you want this?" I'm like, "This fuck," and I told my son, I'm like, "I don't." And he's like, "How many times did you meet this guy?" I'm like, "Brady, I've never met this guy in my life." Brady's like, "Wait,
I know.
we're going to some guy's house we never met." I said, "Brady, I don't know who
Yeah.
the fuck this guy is. We're just going to his house." He's like,
That's,
like,
I know. It was kind of strange. I think, you know, that was through. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what the event was, but I know what it was about. But anyway, you know, 40 people on this call, and I'm sort of just hanging back, and I think I had my Kansas City Royals hat on, and something that you know, Randy had put together, and I just heard you say, "Yeah, I'm going to be in Kansas City the next few days," and I remember just kind of hit me, and I thought, well, who the heck's this guy? And I think I sent him a message and said, "What's is this guy live in Kansas City?" Nah, you know, he kind of told me your story and that you were probably going to move here. So I thought, what the heck, man? I'll just reach out. You know, he's going to be moving somewhere where he doesn't know anybody, so why not just introduce myself? And um, yeah, you know, it was probably a little strange, and yeah, I'm sure you were probably driving in the driveway going, "What is this going
you
on?"
know,
You're glad to see the front porch light was on, but
I'm a little more
that is
open to
great.
things like that. My kid, I think, up until because he kept asking me those questions, we get to the house, and then I just Brady's like, "What do you mean you don't know who this guy is?" I'm like, "Yeah, whatever. He's cooking food for us. We'll figure it out." You know, it's
Right, right,
um, well, you know, it is what it is. But you know,
right.
but I think our love for music, I think we all have those memories, right? Like when we fell in love with music, like
Yeah,
what brings us to this point? You know, and you know, I have memories in my head, and I've talked about them a bunch. But like the reason I did one of these shows is because I always want to. I love finding out about people, like what makes them tick. I love the process. I
right.
love all that stuff. So when you think back to music, and how it started for you. Like, what is your first memory of like you falling in love with music?
I was thinking about that a lot today. I mean, I was really young. Okay, so I've got a few years on you. You know, I was a little guy in the late '70s. You know, so I got a pretty good few generations of music. You know, to hear as I was growing up, but I can remember being in the car with my mom or my dad when I was 4 or 5 years old, and something. You know, they both liked different kinds of music. You know, dad was a little more of a rocker. Mom was listening to kind of the easier uh, more mellow kind of rock stuff, more like the Chicago's and Toto's and things like that. And Dad was more of Led Zeppelin, and I remember a lot of Ted Nugent when I was a kid. But I remember like one of my first memories where I heard a song that I really liked it. I remember I was riding in a car with him, and if you're familiar with the band Supertramp, I mean, I remember
I've
like
oh my
that
love Supertramp.
Okay, so like that Breakfast in America, we probably had it on 8 track at that time, to be honest with you. It might have been an 8 track, it might have been a cassette, but he had that in there. And I just remember, hearing those songs like Goodbye
Oh,
Stranger
Goodbye
and
Stranger. Goodbye Stranger.
that's it. Yeah, yeah,
Nothing
yeah,
else. Oh
yeah,
God, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that and, some of those songs, and even like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin stuff. I mean, I heard and enjoyed by probably 6 or 7 years old. I mean, if I heard Stairway to Heaven, I knew what song that was, And so there was something really early on that caught my ear with different songs that I liked. And it wasn't my parents going, oh, you should like this, you should like that. It was just what was on. I heard it, and I got real interested in it. And as I got, 10, 11 years old, that was around the time that like the, Michael Jackson Thriller was out, and some of those early 80s poppy kind of things were happening, and I just started kind of gravitating towards that and finding what I liked, and that would be the early memories for sure.
It's, I think in life, and the more I've talked to people, like I think as a guy, like you can remember your first kiss, you can remember like your first concert, you remember your first date, like first album. Like I just those are things that like I think are important to like people and like that are like similar to us. Like there's I think music was important to us. Like I think like the generation before us, if you talk to them, for the most part, like the people that grew up in the maybe 50s or maybe the early 60s, like music wasn't as vividly important to them as it was for us, because I feel like music, really especially in the late 60s, was vital to the era that it came out to, how it impacted the news, and or impactful from the news, or how it was impacted by like what was going on around the world, or what was going on in people's lives, and how those songs were generated that way. A lot of times, like if you
Right.
listen to music in the 50s, it was all like dancey music. It was dancey music or music about being in love. Even if the original Beatles music, I mean, if you listen to that, that was love music. And then
Right.
as
Right.
they got further along, it became more generational. I think the Beatles were the band that really started getting that generational gap of like, this music is bigger than what we're utilizing it for. But no, I think it's great, because I think even now, there's always this blocks of like what music was and how important it was to those times. And it's kind of cool to like, it's almost like its own version of history, that we can look back at those things in time as it is history to us personally. We can look back at
Yeah.
music and how that affected our lives at certain times.
It's a timestamp. I mean, it really, for me
100%.
it is. I think that's how people remember. When you talk to the 90-year-old guy. Well, I remember in the Korean War in 1957 on I mean, they can. I'm sorry, and if the Korean War wasn't 1957, I do know that. But, it's amazing. Something at that time was impacting them from day to day to make them remember those dates as clear as they could. And for me, both as a timestamp, physically, mentally, and emotionally. I mean, that's how. I mean, I can remember very specific dates on when albums come out, even as in the 60s and 70s. One, I used to just really get into that even at a very young age, looking at the record albums and reading them, and it was interesting to me. It was a piece that was my piece of art. I'm not a big art guy. I don't go to art museums. I don't. I appreciate it, don't really understand it, but music and album art and stuff like that. That was the thing that really drug me in. I really, I mean, I can remember specific places I was, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old where I heard a song and perked up, and like who was around me and stuff. And I think it's pretty common for people that really love music. I just heard Dave Grohl just did an interview, and I think you and I had a similar conversation like this a few weeks ago where I was talking about that. But just a couple days ago, I watched an interview with Dave Grohl, and he was talking about sort of the same thing about I can remember exactly where I was when this song came out, and it all sounded very familiar. But I think you're right. I think it is history, and it marks a specific spot, and it does go in like little waves and chunks. I mean, I used to think, um,
You gotta be kidding me. All right, we are having some technical difficulties here. Um, Ryan should be jumping on back here in a second. Let's see. Hopefully he gets back on. Where did Ryan go? I don't know what happened. Let me text Ryan real quick and see where he went. Messenger. Ryan. Well, this makes for interesting. The chat and join back. I am thinking that I'm gonna have to get a new dongle. I think it's a dongle. I'm just gonna blame the dongle. All right, let's see if he comes back here in a second. Apologize, as we were getting into a good part of the conversation with myself and Ryan, talking about how music influences us and it can timestamp parts of our lives and how important that is for us. In a sense, while we're getting that, let me get into this real quick. Let me do a commercial. Ryan tries to get back in on his end. Let me do this. Leave room and join room. Oh, there he is. All right, I see you.
Sorry. All right.
All right, hold on a second.
Can you hear me? Right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. I don't know what happened. I don't know if
It's storming pretty good here, so I relocated.
Oh,
it
gee.
may be my internet connection.
Okay, because
Sorry.
it got crazy on my end too. Like it all froze up. I'm like, oh no, what the hell happened here?
Man.
So,
all right.
we are back. All right, good. Sounds
You're
good.
still frozen, but
I'm frozen
yeah.
on my screen. I'm moving. I'm moving. I can see you. You're moving. You're good. So
All right. Well,
my
then
feed's good.
I'll just roll with it, buddy.
They will roll with it. So, this is why they make post production. See, live isn't so
Yeah.
easy.
No kidding.
Um,
Sorry about that.
No. So let's go right into. So we were talking about how music's a timestamper in life and how we can utilize
Yeah.
listening to music and visualizing music and how it can timestamp things. So let's go right into this. Let's go jump right into. So we talked about how music was important. Because the reason most of us are here and the reason why we became friends is through the band Pearl Jam. When was the first time you heard Pearl Jam?
First time I heard them would have been, I would say, let's see, the album 10 dropped in what, was it October of 91, I believe? So maybe even September. But anyhow, I heard them first probably, I think it was through a friend of mine's brother who had both Bad Motorfinger Soundgarden and Pearl Jam 10. And they were both very new, and I didn't know anything about it other than I thought that the names were really weird. I mean, if you really think about Soundgarden, at the time it was, all the bands like White Snake, and you had to kind of sound tough or cool or
That's right.
something like that. So I didn't, I remember just hearing the band names and thinking this, okay, whatever. But the guy sort of force fed me. I mean, he like made me listen to both albums all the way through. Honestly, I remember thinking, okay, yeah, that's fine. It was a little different, but right away it didn't necessarily catch my ear. But um, I ended up about 2 weeks later at a music store, and there was a kid working that I said, "Hey, listen, I want to hear something new. I know there's, what would you suggest?" And he hands me this big. That was when the CDs used to come in the big cardboard box, the tall thin thing, and he hands me this big pink cardboard box, and I look at it, and I was like, "Great, Pearl Jam." I think I heard this already, but when I went home and I put the headphones on and I listened to it in my environment versus somebody like making me listen to it with a whole bunch of people around and all that, I remember real quick recognizing a lot of familiar things, how they were playing. Like I started playing music. Let's see, when I was, I think 14, I bought my first electric guitar and kind of self-taught myself how to play some stuff, but I was sort of, it was before YouTube when you could take lessons on YouTube. So I was sort of terrible at it for like 3 years. And, I remember really though getting into like Jimi Hendrix, and, I wasn't a huge Kiss fan, but I did have like a couple of their cassettes. So I was familiar with their songs. But Led Zeppelin, of course, was always a big one in my life. And there's kind of that blues rock thing going on with those bands that I recognized. I couldn't really play it yet, but I could hear it, and I knew what I was supposed to be doing playing it. But I remember, like, I think the first one that really caught my ear was Black at the beginning, that intro that, Stone playing those seventh chords, and I'm going, this kind of sounds like a Hendrixy thing, I mean, I could hear it. And then Mike does kind of the Stevie Ray Vaughan-ish Hendrix kind of thing over the top of Stone playing these chords. And I remember that really caught my ear, and I recognized it, but it was also kind of a 3-chord song. So it was really cool to me that I could maybe play this thing and did figure it out. But anyhow, that was sort of my first taste of the band. And it didn't take long for, them and every other Seattle band to take off like gangbusters in the early, that year. So the first time.
You brought up a funny thing I haven't thought about in a long time. Why the fuck did they put the CDs in those cardboard things back in the day? Like it was such a waste. The CDs on top, and there was literally nothing underneath it. It was stupid.
I think the idea was because albums were such a big physical specimen. To all of a sudden go to this little tiny thing, you felt like you were trying to force people into the Jetsons or something, like Future World, and so we still needed to have this physical thing that we could open up, and maybe that was it. I don't know.
It was so weird. It was I haven't thought about that in forever. I remember buying Pink Floyd's, what was it called? Eclipse, the album Eclipse, where it had like the flashing red dot on the side of it, and came in this huge box, but literally 90% of it was trash. It was silly. It was silly. I haven't thought about that in forever.
Yeah, you paid $3 for the paper, and then you got to the plastic around the CD, and
Oh God, it's silliness.
Right.
It is interesting how quickly 91 just blew up for so many bands out of Seattle, and how I mean, if you think back to, I mean, Pearl Jam being really the last heavy hitter besides like Mudhoney. You could, Mudhoney is pretty popular. Soundgarden still has a presence without Chris Cornell, but I mean, for the most part, I mean, Pearl Jam is the heavy dog still nowadays. I mean, when it comes to that 91, you know, that scene that popped out, and it's
Yeah,
amazing. 30 years
it,
later.
it was crazy. And like I don't know where I got cut off there, but I was kind of talking about these windows of music. You know, I always say that 3 or 4 year block, and I don't know if it's. I think a lot of it used to be that, like, for instance, in the the Beatles used to put out a new album every 8 or 9 months, and Led
Yeah.
Zeppelin did. I mean, from Led Zeppelin to Led Zeppelin Houses of the Holy, I mean, they were dropping one every year. And I think a lot of it was because without the internet, without uh, radio and the corporate people having control of how that went. I mean, you could stretch an album out longer. There might be, I don't know. I'll just throw one out there. Maybe the album "Let It Be" by the Beatles. Maybe they only dropped a new single every 2 months, so you could sort of, even if you didn't like the first two singles, maybe 6 months later you would finally hear the one that you really liked, and that would make you buy the album. So it gave other bands maybe some time to overlap a little bit. If there was a sound that people were liking, that they could kind of overlap. But then I think just after 3 or 4 years, you're always kind of looking for something new.
Sure.
And now that's been cut so short just because you can, the idea of, you mentioned Pink Floyd. I'm a Pink Floyd fan too. And, I was thinking about that today. The idea of a concept album, it'll never happen again. I mean, no, who doesn't, it
Yeah.
just, that art's been lost, and that was a lot of, I think the reason some of those early albums were so good by some of those bands, because they kind of went into it going, okay, we're going to do 12 songs, but they sort of have to have some continuity or a feel that connects them all together. And now it's just whatever song I like, I'm going to pay $1.99 on iTunes and I'm going to grab it, so you don't get that full effect. And just it seems like it's getting chopped up a lot shorter in time periods now than it used to. Um, you look at the late 60s, there's a lot of Led Zeppelin, the Who was out. You get into the earlier 70s, and people were splitting off from bands, like Peter Frampton goes and does Frampton Comes Alive in the mid 70s. And he was with Humble Pie for a while, but there's that kind of that sound. And in the late 70s it sort of shuffled into, dare I say it, disco for that 3 year span where I guess some people liked it. We still hear some of those songs on the radio, but I just, I think that those things were really important for the albums coming out. Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wall. I mean, those albums were really big to me. I think I had them both on cassette probably in my early teen years, or maybe even a little bit before that. But even then I understood how the story was connected, throughout the whole thing, or I got a pretty good taste of it. And you bought something that had lyrics in it so you could actually read it. You're not just grabbing a song off iTunes because nothing against iTunes, but that is just one song that you like off of something. So
No, I listen. I can't agree with you more. It is interesting, the dynamic of how, previous to streaming digitally and stuff like that, there was the albums. It was a true album concept, or even flow.
yeah.
There was a lot more thought to it. Now it's very, songs sometimes don't fit together on an album, but it's just put there because it's. I don't think as much thought. I mean, there is still bands that do it. I still think My Morning Jacket's a great example of album.
Yeah.
I think Band of Horses is another great example of it. Manchester Orchestra, that's a newer band that someone got me into. I think their latest album is very I think St. Vincent. Oh, maybe I'm putting my foot in my mouth, because now I'm thinking back to some albums that just recently came out, and they are kind of album like. So, but for the most part, it's not concept. There's no concept behind it.
Right,
It's very much
right.
driven through. So yeah, it is kind of like Michelle said. It's so pure. It's not as pure with technology. It's just a different feel. So interesting. It is
Right.
interesting.
Well, and then what I think what bugs me more than anything about all that is just missing the hidden gems. I
Yeah.
mean, well, let's use Pearl Jam as the example. Who would ever know the song Oceans unless they own 10? I mean, but yet the fans all know it because they had the album. They had to go
Yeah.
buy it, or that, or I mean, they would have known four or five that got played on the radio, but you know, Pink Floyd, another good example. There's some songs on the wall that I don't think I've ever heard on the radio, but there's some of my favorite songs that Pink Floyd ever did. But
I
I
think
wouldn't have known that if I didn't have to listen to those to get to the next song, you know?
I think the greatest Pink Floyd song has never been played on the radio, and that's "Dogs" because it's
Ooh.
9 minutes long.
Animals is my favorite. When I was located downstairs, I had animals on the wall. I think it was behind me there, but maybe you couldn't see it. But yeah, dogs is actually like 18 minutes long.
Yeah, it's a long
yeah.
fucking song.
But that song, and yeah, I mean that's a 5 song album with 2 short songs at the beginning and 2 short songs at the end that are kind of the same song, but
Yeah.
all of it rolls together. That's a real good example
Well,
and
thank you.
good pick.
Thank
Yeah.
you. You and Michelle
Good
both say
pick.
a great point. All right, good. I'm good with
Yeah.
that. I'll take it. Yes, it is cool to think that. So now, with keeping up on the topic with Pearl Jam a little bit,
Yeah.
what was your anticipation seeing them live first? With the idea of touring fan and the idea behind our concept of what this show is and our thoughts of what touring fan means is, as people that actually follow bands and appreciate music and the love for it. And you had the love for music and the appreciation for it prior to seeing Pearl Jam live. So previous to seeing them and the build up, and I know you were a fan, you got into the music, you felt it, you had an appreciation for the song Black, like you discussed.
Mhm.
Going to that first show, did you have high expectations and were they met?
Absolutely. I mean, so my first show, um, one that a lot of people around here talk about, and I think I was working nights at the time, so I couldn't go, but KU had a big Day on the Hill show, and the university, which is an hour away from here, and um, all my friends that went said that Pearl Jam just killed it. They knocked it out of the park, and Ed did his Ed thing. He's climbing all over, and everybody was blown away by their energy and their performance. I didn't end up seeing them until, so let's see here. It would have been '93, the night before Thanksgiving. Tickets went on sale a few months before that for a show in Wichita, Kansas, and this is when the ticket stuff all started. Right when Versus dropped, Pearl Jam was trying to kind of do this thing themselves, and Ticketmaster were the jerks. I mean, I think it was the beginning of that, so um, they were kind of playing some oddball places, but I think whenever they originally lined this thing up, I mean, there was 3,000 people and it was general admission. And the tickets sold out, if I remember right, in 32 minutes. And somehow I called in. This is when you used to call in on the telephone and do that. I called in and got four tickets. And at that time their set list was probably I don't know 16, 17 songs long. With everything they were playing. Um, Fantastic. They were great. I mean, it was the sound wasn't fantastic. I remember that, but just that feeling of being in the same room with a band that I liked that much. And I mean, I can remember, I know a lot of people will say this, but I remember having the 10 CD or cassette. I probably had the CD and cassette, knowing me at that time, and also the Versus CD or cassette, and just basically just flip flopping them. When one was over, I'd put the other one in the car stereo, and I really got engaged in it. But I thought they were fantastic live. I thought the energy was there. It was a little crazy. Urge Overkill opened for them, which that was kind of cool. They were good. I didn't know a lot of their songs, but they probably played for 45 minutes, and then I think Pearl Jam played for about an hour. But I was really impressed, and the thing that I was more impressed with than anything, there was no YouTube in 1993, so you didn't get that sneak peek of what was going to happen. I didn't know that Eddie Vedder played the guitar at all. I had no idea. So, me being the guy that funked around on the guitar, I remember they went off. I think they played like probably 11 songs, and then Eddie just came back on the stage and he had a guitar, and I thought, okay, well, we'll see what happens here. I was thinking, I don't know what they're going to play, but he ended up just by himself doing a cover of The Kids Are All Right by The Who. Now, I'm not sure out of the 3,000 people, 500 even knew the song or never even heard it. But I about jumped over the railing. I mean, I was just like, holy, I mean, I couldn't believe that he was playing a Who song. And I loved the Who at that point and didn't have any idea how much they loved, or, Ed loved the Who and was a fan. So it kind of blew my mind. I'm not so sure that wasn't my favorite thing that happened that night, was just him playing that song.
So let me ask you this, because this is a great transition to something I have in queue that I didn't know if I was going to use tonight, but it's in the board. Do you like seeing other bands cover other people's music?
It just depends. Sometimes I think. Okay, I'll get myself in a little trouble here, but like
It's okay.
we when we were talking about seeing Pearl Jam shows and how many songs they play now and everything, it sort of drives me nuts when they end with 8 minutes of "Rockin' in the Free World." I mean, I'll just say it. I like Neil. I love Neil Young, and I like that song, but I'd rather hear two more Pearl Jam songs than 8 minutes of everybody just jamming to jam. And
I get
that's
it.
sort of my opinion, but I bet there have been some. There have been some really good cover songs. I mean, shoot, Bob Dylan wrote "All Along the Watchtower." It wasn't Jimmy, but who did it better?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with Jimmy on that one,
So I'm going to ask you this question. Did you see yesterday that Band of Horses covered Pearl Jam?
I did not.
So
What did they
guess
play?
what? I have queued up,
All right.
and we're going to listen to it and watch it right now. Because first of all, I wasn't going to do this, but you so elegantly came up with just like, hey, talk about cuff. I think this is a great transition right in. So this is from last night. Ben of Band of Horses posted this on his Instagram. I took it right off before it got removed. And this is that video. And I want your honest opinion of this. It's the whole song. So let's listen, and then I want your opinion afterwards.
All right.
You ready?
All right. Sounds great.
Was that it? Oh shit! I didn't even realize it was the end of the video. Anyway,
No.
so now, I was so into. Now let me explain something to you before you get me into this. If you don't know who Band of Horses is, the way that band perform, that is their energy level. That's the high energy level from Band of Horses. You're not going to get any more energy out of them than that. Ben,
Right.
who sings, that is his voice. That is exact. Listen, I loved it. I'm a big Band of Horses fan. They're probably one of my top 20 favorite bands of all time. I've seen them a bunch of times. Love them. So it was cool to see that. But that is 100% a Band of Horses cover of a Pearl Jam song. So with that being said, Ryan, what are your thoughts? Because most of the people on here do not like it that are commenting right now.
Yeah, so you're still frozen on my monitor here, but I pulled up my phone and I was looking at some of the comments. I saw my friend Sean said something there, and I'll tell you more about Sean here in a few. But I think musically they nailed it pretty good. I thought that they did the chord thing just right, and the tempo was good. The vocals were a little bit tough to hear. Because it was a little bit thick on the recording, but I think that I saw Band of Horses open for Pearl Jam in what was that, the 2013 tour when they opened for them?
2010.
2010. Okay. So I didn't know much about them, but I had a couple friends that were with me that really weren't even big Pearl Jam fans, but they really wanted to see Band of Horses. So they talked them up, and I think I even bought whatever CD they had at that time, or maybe I did download it or something. But I think it was pretty good. I think when you do a cover of a song, it has to go two ways. Either you make it your own, like Jimi Hendrix did with All Along the Watchtower, or you better pretty much nail it like the other band does it.
Yeah.
I think that there's not a lot in between. I think if you're creative enough to make it your own and put your own little twist on it, but still keep the same feeling and convey it the same way, then that's great. But I think when bands try to do a cover and maybe they didn't practice it enough and it sort of falls apart, and then they try to bring it back together, it can almost make me twitch a little bit. It's like, you probably should have just left that alone and not even tried it.
So the story from that, from my understanding, was Ben is a big Pearl Jam fan. I've actually talked to him about Pearl Jam. He's a huge fan. Very appreciative of Eddie and everything he did by letting Band of Horses go on tour with them. And Ben just, he asked the guys like, hey, do you want to try this? Let's just do it. They didn't play it live. It was just it was called like a sound check thing. And Ben recorded it and put it on his Instagram. And I mean, I love Band of Horses. So having those two dynamics come together, I can understand if you don't like his voice, get it. It is acquired taste. But I dug it. I dug it for sure. But let me ask you this. We're talking about memories and things that like really stand out, especially in concerts and things we like.
Yeah.
What memories do you have, from Pearl Jam? Like going to see them live, is there something that like really stands out for you that like God, that's a memory I'll never forget?
Yeah, I went to. I was fortunate enough. Me and a friend of mine, for the Yield tour in 1998, got tickets to see both shows at Madison Square Garden. Um, it was fun. I mean, we, a couple 20 somethings going up to New York for a weekend, and I'm not sure we had $10 in our pocket once we got there, but we made it, and it was cool. So we went to, first of all, Madison Square Garden. I had just seen them. It was cool. They played on July 3rd, which is my birthday, that summer. It's about 500 degrees that day. It was an outdoors show, and I thought they just absolutely knocked it out of the park at that show. But then, a few months later, it was actually September 10th and September 11th of '98. Went to New York, and let's just say this, man: East Coast people, they know their music, and they know they aren't the ones that are just standing there going, "When are they going to play live?" They know the music, they know the new albums, and they pay attention to that. And I noticed that right away. Just that pushed the energy level somewhere else. And I know. So the first night we were there, this is the one thing that jumps out at me was. There were some people in the front that I think had maybe seen them in New Jersey the night before or something like that, but they had signs that said Breath on them. You know, the song Breath off the single soundtrack. Um, can you still hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. And anyhow, I think Eddie said something the first night like, "I see your signs, it ain't happening," you know, blah blah blah, you know, and he sort of just bypassed it. Maybe gave the short, "We've already got the set list" speech, you know, and but these the signs throughout the show, I kind of kept seeing these people holding them up. Seemed like it was kind of growing across the front. We were sort of the front of the upper level, a little bit off to Mike's side, and still a great seat. But by night number two, and Ben Harper opened, which was really cool because I'd never seen or heard Ben Harper before. And this is when he still sat down and played guitar. He put it on his lap and played it. It was he played differently then, but he night number two he played. Pearl Jam came out, and within a few songs in, these signs had like tripled. Everybody had one, and I remember Ed just sort of like pointing at somebody and saying, "All right, you know, you guys have pushed it and pushed it," and he even said maybe a couple things that weren't so nice, but meaning it in a joking way, and they ended up playing the song. And
Well, Ryan, funny thing, I have the video for that.
Really?
Yeah, so let's relive that moment from night two in Madison Square Garden in 1998, and let's see what was said and what it sounded
All right.
like, and let's talk about it on the other side. So here we
Cool.
go.
You fucking cocksucker. Bitch. You fucking... You know, we come up here as a collective band and we give and we give and you just fucking want more, and you know what? You deserve it. This is like organized religion here. I've never seen anything like it. Do you see what's happening? Do you see what's happening? It's the third night in a row, right? Third night in a row. This shit's just going on. Well, fuck you. We're gonna play it.
It sound like I get the YouTube version I got. I guess the video cuts in and out on it a couple times, but that is,
Yeah.
you know, and it was crazy because Shannon brought it up a little while ago. The Breath campaign, the email chain worked at that time. You know, back then, that's how communication went in the 10 Club, and that's what the forums, the email chains of getting things to work, and
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting how that came about, but you know what drove me nuts about that, and this is why I hate New York so much, and I'm sorry if I offend anybody, but I'm not. The amount of shit that was thrown on stage,
Yeah, right. I saw that too. I was laughing. I was like, I don't remember that even phasing them. I don't know. Maybe just a younger mind and didn't care as much or something. But it was.
But man, Madison Square Garden,
It's kind of strange.
it to me is the most overrated venue in America. Like yeah. Oh god, hate Madison Square Garden. The real gardens in Boston, first of all. Second of all,
Well, you know.
the sound in Madison Square Garden is horrendous. It is a shitty place. It smells. It stinks. I just can't stand New York. Me and New York
man.
do not work well together.
Yeah, see, I I've been to New York a few times. My grandmother was from New York and grew up in Manhattan until she was in her early 20s, and then ended up moving to St. Louis and then eventually bounced to Kansas City. But that's met my grandfather when he was stationed in New York, and one of those kind of stories. But so we had been fortunate enough to she had taken me and my mom and sister to New York a few times. So I always kind of liked New York just because I knew that's where she was from. And I don't know, felt like there was some kind of connection there. And I don't know. I just had an appreciation for it. It's funny that you say that. Yeah, I guess you're originally a Boston guy, so the Garden.
Well, I lived on Long Island. I've lived in Boston. I lived in Maine. I just don't. I am not. I don't like. I'm not a big fan of. I can't stand New York. I just, and it's not the people. There's some people there that are great. There's a lot of people that I don't like, but I just not a fan. No.
Right. Hey, you know what? It's got to work for you. It's funny that when you played that, I mean, I'm sitting there going, that was 23 years ago, and it really, as soon as he said, fuck it, we're going to play it, then it seemed like, I mean, it just doesn't. I remember that as clear as day. Again, it's one of those timestamp things, I mean, I'll never forget a few of those things that happened during that show, and
sure.
And whether it smelled bad or not, the people were still, really into the show, and met some nice people. I don't know. I guess I have kind of that Midwest accent, so I remember these girls in front of me kept turning around going, "You must be from Long Island or something," and I don't know what that means for sure, but I wasn't sure if that was an insult or what that meant, but
yeah, Long Island, they got that like that. I don't know how to do the accent. They got a weird accent out there. It's like an old.
I never got that out, but I've always remembered that. They just kept saying, "You sound like you're from Long Island." I'm like, I'm from Missouri, so I don't know.
It is insanity. So Ryan, when was the last time you saw Pearl Jam?
Oh, well, it would have been the Lightning Bolt tour, so 2013. Is that right?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So, just going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, I mean, it was just life was a little crazy the last few years on some different other levels, and
sure.
And God, I just was like, and not just there, not just that band, but other band. I had, like I said, I had the Rage Against the Machine tickets for that May. I mean, I sort of felt like I needed to hear and see some of those people I hadn't seen in a while. And some people, crave the McRib when it's at McDonald's. I crave music, and it's maybe a really bad comparison, but
yeah, I don't know if that's the greatest comparison in its own sense, but it's similar.
But you know what I mean? It's just, you have those things that you feel like you need just to take you away for a minute. I was so excited about getting to see them again. And, it just, I think I've seen that band, and I know there's probably people watching. I've seen them 75 times. I think you're one of them, but I've seen them 13 or 14 times, and it's usually either Kansas City, St. Louis. I got to do the New York thing for the 2 nights, but and then of course the Wichita show that I went to first, but definitely something that I felt like I needed, and all of a sudden it just went away, and that sort of sucked, but it was, it's coming back around, right? I mean, we'll get to see him again sometime soon.
I will tell you this.
Many other bands.
I'm not. It ain't gonna be. In a year's time, I'll definitely be in Kansas City, so it's not far off. Where I'll be living there, and I'll be right in the corner from you. I'm not a good influence when it comes to seeing Pearl Jam. I have convinced a lot of people to travel very far with me to go see the band. So, start saving your frequent flyer miles and get ready for for some shit. Because I mean, first of all, I learned one thing: Spirit Airlines, which a lot of people don't like, they fly from Kansas City to just about everywhere in the country that Pearl Jam's playing a show, and a lot of those flights are like $89 round trip. My ass don't need to pack much. I will go wherever the Pearl Jam wind takes me.
So you won't go to Madison Square Garden because it's
Fuck
funny,
that.
but you'll go on.
No, well, the crazy thing is, I am going to Madison Square Garden to see them. Not of choice, but of the fact that I need to see them as many times as possible.
Right. Right.
You know, that's just the desire and the goal. It's kind of addicting. But you know, in the same sense too, and what's cool about the show and why I do this and the people that are tuning in and stuff, I like, you know, going to shows and meeting people and talking their stories like I'm talking to you about it to kind of catch up and learn about people. You know, because it just makes things interesting. It kind of makes what you do and what you love, you know, more comfortable, because for most people that are listening right now, I'm pretty sure you have people in your life that don't understand why you continue to go see Pearl Jam, or why you follow the band, or why you get excited on the 10th to open a newsletter, or why you're begging for more tour dates, or why you see them more than once on a tour. People just don't understand that. But when you can start finding like-minded people that completely understand that narrative, and you can actually be there and have that that camaraderie of someone that you've never met before, like you and me in Kansas City, sitting down at a table outside at some guy's house that I've only known for 5 minutes, but opening up stories, that's when you start realizing that the music behind Pearl Jam and what they're doing, it's bigger than that itself. It's a community built around these guys that fell in love with music, like we fell in love with different artists that built more than just music. They built a community and a backbone that brought us all together so that we have these moments. A quick example, last month was one of the worst months of my life in a very long time, just so much up and down. The amount of people that reached out to me, including yourself, Ryan, which I appreciate, you know, contact me saying, hey man, if you want to talk, let's talk. Or, you know, how many people I cried with on a phone because they understood what I was going through. And, you know, I talked to 2 people on the phone that I've never met in person, but we've talked and they got me through a lot. And that's what music, and that's what this band represents. And that's why these stories, like your story at Madison Square Garden, or your story of getting the album for the first time and listening to it when the guy handed it to you in that box and you remember that, those moments are what important because it builds the character of the people that are in this community and bring us together.
Right. I that's you're exactly right, man. And this, first of all, hope things are better for you. And I mean, everybody, that is so cool that many people reached out. And you know, I think a lot of what I learned like during the pandemic was just, and I think I already knew this, but maybe I just needed to be reminded of it, how just those little touches here and there, how much that can mean to somebody and change their day. And you know, or even if they have a crappy day, if you can take them away from it for 4 or 5 minutes, you know, and just get their mind on something else to help them process what's going on. It's so important. And I do recognize that. And that's awesome that many people have reached out to you, and people you don't even know, you know, I think that's something we've learned in the last couple of years that we can do. You know, it's not, maybe 5 years ago, it would have been weird for you to get some messages from people you didn't know saying, hey, sorry, you're going through this. You're like, who the hell is this? You know, but I think that's something we've sort of learned to do again, you know, being stuck to say, and not being able to go do what we want to do and be around our buddies and pals that enjoy music as much as we do.
Yeah, I cannot agree with you more, and that's what makes this idea special. You know, it is, you know, and that's, you know, when I first did Hitchhiker, when I started this thing, it was, and I kind of told you this, I'm like, it's a natural conversation. There's really no topics. We go places, I get to learn about you, but we get to talk about things like this. And it's this topic that always comes up that's so important because, you know, we were talked about before about like the idea of canceling, you know, pop culture and arts and stuff in schools. Like, arts and music is what is kept sanity through the pandemic. We already talked about that, but there is like a push in the world right now to cut this shit out of like school systems and remove it from, you know, middle America, where, you know, unfortunately, like, I don't think people realize how much music saves lives and how much sanity that can bring. And it's just, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane to me. You know, that's one reason why I fell in love with, and Michelle can vouch for this, you know, the Project Matters up in New Jersey. Like, there's people out there that are pushing music and giving it to kids that don't have access to it because they understand the realism of like helping music. You know, I mean, I'm pretty sure you can say this, and I hope I'm not speaking out of term, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but there's plenty of times in our lives where we have the worst fucking day possible, and we can go and put on a song, whether it's a Pearl Jam song, whether it's a Pink Floyd song, hell, whether it's a Lady Gaga song, and that song can change.
Well, don't push it. I'm kidding. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. You're right. That is so true, and it can bring you up, it can bring you down. I mean, there are happy songs out there that I don't really like them just because it makes me remember something I was going through at the time that I don't really want to think about.
Sure.
I mean, it can be a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, you're exactly right. It can definitely veer you in a different direction if you can take the time to actually put the headphones on and really just try to zone in on it. And I need to do that more again. I used to be really good about that, and it's something that I feel like I've kind of got away from, but you're exactly right.
Do you know what one of the top 25 careers that are new career titles in the world are, that's actually becoming a college major, it's working on it, that is one of the most successful things when it comes to healing people and also financially?
Music therapy.
Yeah, God damn it, I thought you weren't going to know that. But yes, you're correct. You're 100% correct. That son of a bitch.
Well, that is something I'm pretty familiar with. I know a couple music therapists that I'm very familiar with that, with with all of it. Yeah, I think it's funny. As soon as you started saying that, I knew exactly where you're going with that, and we really didn't discuss this before.
No,
I mean,
no.
But I knew what you were going for, and I think it is really sad that the schools are cutting those arts out. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I never played an instrument in school. I still don't read music. I mean, I know what chords are and I kind of figure it out, but if you put music in front of me, I'd almost say, why don't you just play it and let me figure it out before I try to do this thing, And so it wasn't something that I really went for, but it was always still around, I mean, you always had that class that you were two doors down from the band room and you could hear them playing something that sounded familiar, and you kind of, did one of those when you lost interest in whatever class you're in. But just to cut it out because of, they say financial reasons or it's not important, that's pretty sad. And I've got a lot of friends that are very good artists that they can paint and they can draw, and I appreciate it. I respect it. I probably even envy them a little bit that they can do all that stuff because I can't. but that's their form of escape, and that's what they do, when they're down. It might be something really simple that they draw, but it takes them away for a few minutes. And to me, it's music is the art that I recognize and that clicks with me and helps me relax or steer myself into a different mood.
Now that we're talking about this, I'm gonna have to reach out to my friend. Her name's Katie, and she is a musical therapist. She actually went from a doctorate program to be a doctor in psychology, and just totally switched up to be a music therapist. And actually, she's from New York, which is hilarious. And but she's not even taking any more clients on. She's that busy. But we did have a conversation a couple weeks ago. She needs to come on the show because but she was telling me, she's like, Anthony, there's a list of artists that are highly recommended to listen to through music therapy, and she's like, actually, some of the music you listen to is on that list, and in the top 5 was Bowie. Like Bowie was in the top 5. Like she said, Bowie's music is instrumental in therapy. And I was like, she got me thinking. I'm like, well, fuck, I do realize like sometimes in my life, like I do tend to lean on that music when I'm going through a rough time. So it is interesting. I'm definitely have to jump into that. That's I'm writing those notes down. Good stuff right there.
Yeah, call Katie. See what she thinks about the garden. Oh!
Yeah. Well,
sorry, I got to give you a little trouble about that.
Well, that's all good. It's all good. Whatever. That's all good. It's all right. If you've been to both gardens in Boston and in New York, the experience.
I need to get to Boston. I know. I need to check it out.
Oh yeah. Well, listen. I guarantee you, the next time you go to Boston, I will be around. Especially Pearl Jam's playing there, and I guarantee we'll probably be on the same flight, seeing as we'll be both living in Kansas City at the time.
Well, and then that's where my friend Sean that wasn't. He chimed in a couple times here, I think. Mm-hmm. I saw him earlier, but he lives in Boston now, and he's originally from Kansas City. So we've got one more person we could grab up too while we're there.
Listen, my last time I went to Boston, and I'll keep the story short. We're going over an hour and 15. I told you, we start jumping on this thing. You just we
Okay, yeah.
we can fucking go everywhere. But the last time I was in Boston, I went with my buddy Darrow, who's my touring guy, and we rented an Airbnb right outside of Quincy, and we just took the T, which is the train up there, the metro. And, it was just great. And you just go see, I saw so many people. It was amazing. Such a good time. Cool. And it's crazy. My circle of friends has definitely grown tremendously in the last couple of years. And God See Her Now festival, which is that fucking whole story in itself with poor Michelle, who's tuning in right now, with her breaking every bone in her body, trying, and then not seeing the damn band. But just meeting all the people, this is gonna be a good tour. It's gonna be good to see all of our friends again, and really just catch up.
And that's like I said, I've never been on any social media with any music group stuff, so it's gonna be kind of weird. But I know I'm gonna run into people. I mean, I'm like, well, do I just carry the guitar around with me, or
you never know. You never know. Maybe me and Michelle will come up with another we can't call it shore stock, but maybe we'll come up with some little thing up there, and we'll have you play. And who the fuck knows? You never know. We always listen. Touring Fan Live is always moving. We have a lot of great pieces behind the scenes. But holy shit, yeah, we have some cool plans come up for the future. But listen,
well, that's
Ryan,
cool. Anytime. I'm always happy to help with anything. So,
first of all,
if you need anything.
Oh, 100%, dude. First of all, can't thank you enough for coming on and chatting with us and all that fun shit, and and I'm pretty sure you're going to be a part of some other things in the future. We've talked, and I'm excited about that. But before we close things out, I do have to announce. Let me do this. I was about to totally forget about this. Let me pull up my script for this too before I forget. I don't have my glasses, so excuse me if I stumble over my damn words. Hold on a second here. Here it is. And swap it over. Let me hit the music. There we go. On November 30th, myself and Trey are back for a huge episode of Let's Talk Vinyl. The 15th episode of Let's Talk Vinyl, we will be digging into the Pearl Jam classic Save You off of Riot Act, which is kind of funny because this is Riot Act week. We'll be talking some stats, facts, and watching a live version of the song. But also, we'll be breaking open a bottle of Spiders from Mars. This is the bottle of wine that Holly, Trey's wife, has said is her favorite bottle of wine. I just got it the other day. It is killing me not to break that thing open. But then we'll be doing something special, completely different than we've never done before. In the last episode, we talked about Eddie Vedder's top 13 albums of all time and what his were based off the article that recently came out of Spin Magazine. On this episode, myself and Trey are going to be going through our top 13 albums of all time and talking more in depth about why they're our favorite albums and go from there. So on November 30th, tune in where we talk about our top 13 favorite albums of all time, talk about the albums, talk about the song Save You off the album Riot Act, and also break open that lucrative, most sought-after bottle of wine, Spiders from Mars, hence why the David Bowie Aladdin lightning bolt is, I can't even think of the fucking word, over our damn microphone. And if you can't tune in live, just like this show, it's real simple. You can tomorrow. This show will be on as a podcast across every podcast platform. A little bit later in the day, about 5:00, or you can watch it on our YouTube channel. So, if you're doing that, do me a favor, like, subscribe, do that stuff because the algorithm helps make us more popular, and I like to be a cool kid. Ryan, as always, brother, hang tight. Don't hang up quite yet. We're gonna end the show here in just a second. But thanks for coming on and talking.
Absolutely.
And talking about some
thanks
stuff.
for having me, Anthony.
Oh, dude, listen, I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of late night chats like this in the near future. By that time, I hope to be much slimmer too, as I continue to slim my ass down. Maybe I'll be
You're just gonna blow away.
I hope so. I blew my mind. All right, well, listen, guys, thank you for tuning in to Hitchhiker and the Touring Fan Live. Until next time, my name's Anthony. That's Ryan. Thanks for tuning in. And their next show's on the 30th. All right, now it's for some legal mumbo jumbo so we can close the show.
All right.